Donald Trump cannot imagine Russia is pleased with North Korea's latest missile test as it landed closer to Russia than Japan. North Korea's ballistic missile flew for half an hour and reached an unusually high altitude before landing in the Sea of Japan, the South Korean, Japanese and U.S. militaries said. With the missile impacting so close to Russian soil, in fact, closer to Russia than to Japan. The president cannot imagine that Russia is pleased, the White House said in a statement. North Korea had been the flagrant menace for too long, it said, and Washington maintains its ironclad commitment to stand with its allies in the face of the serious threat it poses. The latest provocation should serve as a call for all nations to implement far stronger sanctions against the North, it added. The North's launch was not consistent with an intercontinental ballistic missile, the U.S. Pacific Command said. Japanese Defence Minister Tomomi Inada said the missile flew for about 30 minutes, traveling about 800 kilometers, 500 miles, and reaching an altitude of 2,000 kilometers, 1,240 miles, a flight pattern that could indicate a new type of missile. David Wright, co-director of the Global Security Program at the Union of Concerned Scientists, said the missile could have a range of 4,500 kilometers, about 2,800 miles, if flown on a standard, instead of a lofted, trajectory, considerably longer than Pyongyang's current missiles. He said the launch may have been of a new mobile, two-stage liquid-fueled missile North Korea displayed in a huge military parade last month. The flight path of the ballistic missile was a considerable distance from Russian territory and posed no threat to Russia, the Russian Defense Ministry said. A Kremlin spokesman said earlier Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is visiting Beijing, was concerned about the missile test. North Korea is widely believed to be developing an intercontinental missile tipped with a nuclear weapon capable of reaching the United States, which Mr. Trump has vowed not to let that happen. The North's state media said the nation will bolster its nuclear capability unless the United States abandons its hostile policy. The United States should never expect us to give up our nuclear capability, the main Rodong newspaper said in a commentary carried by the Korean Central News Agency. It said Mr. Trump's maximum pressure and engagement policy is only aimed at stifling us and will compel the North to strengthen our nuclear deterrent at the maximum speed. Mr. Trump has previously said he would be honored to meet North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un under the right circumstances. Yesterday, a top North Korean diplomat said the reclusive state was open to dialogue with the Trump administration under the right conditions. South Korea and Japan also swiftly condemned the launch, which jeopardies South Korean leader Moon Jae-in's willingness for dialogue with the rival North. The president expressed deep regret over the fact that this reckless provocation occurred just days after a new government was launched in South Korea, a senior presidential secretary said. The president said we are leaving open the possibility of dialogue with North Korea, but we should sternly deal with a provocation to prevent North Korea from miscalculating. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe told reporters the launch was absolutely unacceptable and Japan will respond resolutely. Japan's Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida said he and his South Korean counterpart agreed dialogue for dialogue's sake with North Korea is meaningless. China's foreign ministry expressed opposition to the missile test and called on all sides to exercise restraint. A ministry spokeswoman, Hua Chunying, said countries should not do things that further escalate tensions in the region. In Beijing, Chinese President Xi Jinping told Russian counterpart Mr. Putin their countries are both playing an important role as a balancing power in world affairs by seeking a peaceful way out of the crises in Syria and the Korean Peninsula. Last month, North Korea launched the Pukguk-Song-2 missile, an upgraded, extended-range version of its submarine-launched ballistic missile, from the same site. South Korean and U.S. military officials said the launch was a significant development as it successfully tested a solid fuel engine from a mobile launcher. The missile flew about 500 kilometers with an altitude of 550 kilometers. The North attempted but failed to test launch ballistic missiles 4 times in the past 2 months but has conducted various tests since the beginning of last year at an unprecedented pace. It also conducted its 4th and 5th nuclear tests last year. The launch also comes as troops from the US, Britain, France and Japan gather on remote US islands in the Pacific for drills that are partly a message to North Korea. The USS Carl Vinson, an aircraft supercarrier, is also engaging with South Korean Navy ships in waters off the Korean peninsula. The U.S. Pacific Command said it was assessing the type of missile but it was not consistent with an intercontinental ballistic missile. Japanese Defence Minister Tomomi Inada said the missile could be of a new type. The missile flew 700 kilometers and reached an altitude of more than 2,000 kilometers, according to officials in South Korea and Japan, further and higher than an intermediate-range missile North Korea successfully tested in February from the same region of Kusong, northwest of its capital Pyongyang. North Korea is widely believed to be developing an intercontinental missile tipped with a nuclear weapon that is capable of reaching the United States. Experts said the latest test showed a considerably longer range than missiles North Korea had previously tested, meaning it had likely made improvements since its February test. The reported altitude would indicate the missile was launched at a high trajectory. UCS Global Security Program Co-Director and missile expert David Wright said if the missile had been fired at a standard trajectory, it would have had a maximum range of about 4,500 kilometers. Kim Dong-yub, from Kyung-nam University's Institute of Far Eastern Studies in Seoul, said he estimated a standard trajectory firing would give it a range of 6,000 kilometers, meaning it would be capable of reaching Hawaii. An intercontinental ballistic missile is considered to have a range of more than 6,000 kilometers. Japan said the missile flew for 30 minutes before dropping into the sea between North Korea's east coast and Japan. The North has consistently test-fired missiles in that direction. The launch served as a call for all nations to implement stronger sanctions against North Korea, it added. Russian President Vladimir Putin said he was concerned about the test, a Kremlin spokesman said on the sidelines of a visit by Putin to Beijing. The launch, at 5:27 a.m. Seoul time, came 2 weeks after North Korea fired a missile that disintegrated minutes into flight, marking its 4th consecutive failure since March. South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who took office on Wednesday, held his first National Security Council in response to the launch, which he called a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions, his office said. The president said, while South Korea remains open to the possibility of dialogue with North Korea, it is only possible when the North shows a change in attitude, Yoon Young-chan, Moon's press secretary, told a briefing. Mr. Moon won Tuesday's election on a platform of a moderate approach to North Korea and has said he would be willing to go to Pyongyang under the right circumstances, arguing dialogue must be used in parallel with sanctions. China, the North's sole main ally, which nevertheless objects to its weapons programs, called for restraint and for no one to exacerbate tension. Relevant Security Council resolutions have clear rules about North Korea using ballistic missile technology to carry out launches, China's foreign ministry said in a statement. China opposes relevant launch activities by North Korea that are contrary to Security Council resolutions. All relevant parties should exercise restraint. The launch will also complicate Moon's efforts to mend ties with China that have been strained by a decision by South Korea's former government to deploy a U.S. anti-missile defense system aimed at defending against North Korea. Despite South Korean and U.S. assurances that the deployment is defensive, China considers the system's powerful radar a threat to its security. In a telephone conversation with Chinese President Xi Jinping last week, Mr. Moon said while he understood China's concern, it would be difficult to resolve the issue unless North Korea stopped being provocative. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said North Korea's repeated missile launches were a grave threat to our country and a clear violation of UN resolutions. Mr. Abe said the foreign ministers of Japan and South Korea had spoken after the firing, and his top security advisor had a call with U.S. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. There was no immediate reaction from China. U.S. President Donald Trump has vowed not to let that happen.